The general's blood pulled faster than gravity should allow. Mara watched it spread across the polished cafeteria floor, measuring the loss, arterial spray pattern, volume displacement, time until hypovolemic shock. 6 seconds. Maybe 7. She was already moving. 36 hours earlier, St. Catherine's Medical Center smelled like overcooked vegetables and floor wax at 3 in the morning. Chen pushed her cart through the executive wing's cafeteria, restocking napkin dispensers that nobody used because nobody came here at this hour, which was exactly why she'd requested this shift. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everything in that particular shade of institutional green that made everyone look half dead. At 32, Mara had perfected the art of looking entirely unremarkable, faded scrubs that hung loose on her frame, dark hair pulled back with a clip that had seen better days, eyes perpetually tired behind drugstore reading glasses she didn't actually need. Chen, you get the executive lounge. Marcus, the night supervisor, barely looked up from his phone. Copy ya? On it. She caught herself again. 7 months here, and she still slipped into operator language. Almost done. He grunted and went back to his screen. Mara was furniture to him. To everyone. The quiet cafeteria nurse who restocked and cleaned and never caused problems. Invisible. Exactly how she needed it. She'd left Delta Force 18 months ago after Mosul. After the things she didn't think about. After she'd decided that if she took one more life, even to save others, something essential in her would break permanently. So she'd walked away from special operations, from the unit, from the call sign Phantom, that she'd earned through 37 combat missions as a medic embedded with operators who trusted her to keep them breathing. Now she cleaned cafeterias in a hospital that served DC's elite. Congressmen, lobbyists, the kind of people who never noticed the help. It was almost peaceful. The executive wing was different from the main hospital. Marble instead of linoleum, art that didn't come from IKEA, private rooms that cost more per night than Mara's monthly rent. Rich people got sick too, but they did it with better furniture. She was wiping down tables when the elevator chimed. 3 a.m. Nobody came here at 3 a.m. 2 men in dark suits stepped out first, scanning the space with professional efficiency. Secret Service, Mara recognized immediately. The earpieces, the subtle bulges of concealed weapons, the way they moved. Her pulse quickened involuntarily, muscle memory from a different life. Then the wheelchair. The man in it was maybe 70, ramrod straight despite his seated position. Even in a hospital gown, he carried himself like someone used to command. Mara saw the West Point ring, the bearing, the way the nurses deferred to him. Military. High-ranking. General Madison's suite, one of the Secret Service agents said to the nurse. We'll need to sweep it first. Of course. Room 407. They wheeled him past Mara's table. She kept her head down, wiping the same spot in slow circles. Just another invisible employee. But as they passed, the general's eyes found hers. Just for a second. Something in his gaze, sharp, assessing, made her wonder if invisible worked as well as she thought. Chen. Marcus appeared at her shoulder after they'd gone. VIP floor needs extra staffing tonight. Big deal, General. Whole security thing. Can you cover? Every instinct screamed no. Stay invisible. Stay away from anything military that might recognize what she'd been. Sure, she heard herself say. Present time Mara had been restocking the 4th floor break room when she heard it. Raised voices from 407, then the crash. She moved without thinking, her cart forgotten. The Secret Service agents were at the door, talking urgently into radios. Inside the room, someone was shouting for a doctor. What happened? Mara pushed past them. Ma'am, you need to, on medical staff. What happened? She was already in the room. The general was on the floor beside his bed, his hospital gown soaked with blood, and 4-pole lay overturned. He must have tried to stand, pulled out his central line. The arterial line in his femoral had torn free. Femoral artery. The big one. A resident was frozen at the bedside, hands hovering uselessly. The line came out, and, call a code. Mara dropped to her knees, her hands already finding the wound. Now. I don't have. There's no equipment. Then get some. She applied pressure, but blood pulsed between her fingers. Too much. Too fast. The general's eyes found hers again. Conscious still, but fading. Fix it, he whispered. Not a request. An order. Sir, yes, sir. The response was automatic. His eyes widened slightly. Recognition. Mara's mind raced through options. The crash cart was 2 minutes away. He didn't have 2 minutes. She needed to clamp the artery, needed sutures, needed equipment that wasn't here. Where she could do it the way she'd done it in Kandahar, in the mountains, in a dozen firefights where the only tools were her hands and whatever she could improvise. You. She pointed at a Secret Service agent. Your belt. Now. What? Belt. 3 seconds, or he bleeds out. The agent moved. Mara took the belt and looped it around the general's thigh, cinching it tight. A field tourniquet. The bleeding slowed but didn't stop. Pen. She snapped at the resident. What? Any pen. Give it to me. He handed her a ballpoint. Mara broke it in half, used the barrel to twist the belt tighter, a windlass tourniquet now. The bleeding stopped. The general's breathing was shallow, rapid. Early shock. You need to elevate his legs, the resident said shakily. Standard protocol. No. Mara's voice cut through. Femoral bleed. You elevate and you restart the bleeding. We need surgical intervention in the next 90 seconds. She was already stripping the pillowcase, folding it into a compression bandage, packing the wound site. Her hands moved with precision born from doing this under mortar fire, in the dark, with people screaming. The general's hand caught her wrist. His grip was weak but deliberate. I know you, he whispered. You're Phantom. The room went silent except for the alarms. Mara's hands still for just a fraction of a second. Then she met his eyes. Sir. Bullshit. He actually smiled through the pain. Once a medic. Always. The trauma team burst through the door, real doctors with real equipment. Mara stood back, letting them take over. Her hands were covered in blood. The Secret Service agents were staring at her. How did you? One started. Cafeteria staff, she said quietly. Just happened to be nearby. But the general was still watching her as they loaded him onto a gurney. And Mara knew that invisible had just become impossible. The trauma surgeon found Mara in the staff bathroom, scrubbing blood from her hands for the 3rd time. The water ran pink, then clear, but she kept scrubbing. You saved his life. Dr. Sarah Kim leaned against the doorframe. That tourniquet bought us the time we needed. Where'd you learn that? YouTube. Mara shut off the water. Right? YouTube. Kim's expression said she didn't believe a word. General Madison wants to see you. When he's stable. I'm cafeteria staff. I shouldn't have. You should have and you did. He's asking for you specifically. Kim paused. Who are you really? Nobody. Mara pushed past her and headed for the service elevator. Her hands were shaking now. Delayed stress response. Normal after crisis intervention. Not normal was the way her heart hammered against her ribs, the way her old call sign had sounded in the general's voice. She'd been Phantom for 6 years in the unit. The medic who appeared when operators went down, who worked miracles with trauma shears and hemostatic gauze. The one they called when conventional medicine wasn't enough. She'd walked away from that. From the adrenaline, the brotherhood, the impossible saves. Because for every life she saved, she'd watched 3 more slip away. And in Mosul, in that last mission, the elevator doors opened to the basement. Mara stepped out into the maintenance corridor, needing space to breathe. John. She spun. Marcus stood there, but his expression had changed. No longer the board supervisor. Something sharper now. That was impressive up there. Real impressive. He stepped closer. Want to tell me where a cafeteria nurse learns combat medicine? First aid training. Everyone should. I was Army. 3 deployments. I know what I saw. His eyes narrowed. You move like special operations. Talk like it too. Sir. Yes, sir, to a general you supposedly never met. Mara's pulse quickened. She'd gotten sloppy, let muscle memory override caution. I need to get back to work. No, you need to tell me the truth. Because if you're running from something, if you're hiding, I'm not running. The words came out harder than intended. I'm trying to disappear. There's a difference. Marcus studied her for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, he nodded. Okay, but the General's Secret Service detail is asking questions. And whatever you were, whatever you did, it's about to come out. He was right. Mara could feel it, the carefully constructed walls of her new life starting to crack. She made it through the rest of her shift on autopilot, restocking supplies and avoiding eye contact. At 6 a.m., as she was clocking out, 2 men in suits intercepted her at the service entrance. Miss Chen, we need to ask you some questions. Not Secret Service. These were different, older, harder. The kind of men who worked in buildings that didn't officially exist. About what? About how a cafeteria worker performed a field tourniquet that saved a 3-star general's life. And about how that general recognized you. The older one showed credentials that confirmed what Mara already knew. DOD, we've been looking for you for 18 months, Phantom. That's not my name anymore. It is when a general calls you by it. It is when you demonstrate capabilities that don't exist outside special operations. He gestured to a black SUV. Please. The general wants to thank you personally. And we need to talk about why you vanished. Mara's jaw tightened. I didn't vanish. I reside. You ghosted your psych evaluation. Never filed exit papers. Just disappeared from Fort Bragg one night and fell off the grid. His voice softened slightly. After Mosul. After you lost Captain Richards. The name hit like a physical blow. Mara's hands clenched. I'm not going anywhere with you. It's not a request. The general made it an order. He paused. He said to tell you, the team needs their medic. One more time. I'm not on a team anymore. Then why did you save him? Why risk exposure if you're really done? Because she couldn't help it. Because when someone was bleeding out, her hands moved before her brain could object. Because being a medic wasn't something you stopped being. It was something you were. Mara looked at the SUV, then back at the hospital. Her safe, invisible life waiting behind those doors. One conversation, she said finally. Then I walk. The general was in post-op recovery, monitors beeping steadily. He looked smaller without the wheelchair, without the command presence. Just an old man in a hospital bed. But his eyes were sharp when Mara entered. Phantom. He tried to sit up. Don't. She moved to adjust his fore. Old habits. You'll tear your sutures. Still got that bedside manner. Or lack thereof. He smiled. I never got to thank you. For Kabul. You saved my nephew's life in 16. Lieutenant Morrison? Mara remembered. Young officer, sucking chest wound, 50-50 odds in the field. She'd kept him breathing through a 6-hour extraction. Just doing my job, sir. Like you did tonight. Except tonight you weren't supposed to be here. You were supposed to be gone. He studied her. Why'd you leave, Phantom? You read my file. You know what? I read that Captain Richards died in Mosul. That you were the medic on scene. That you tried for 40 minutes to save him and couldn't. His voice was gentle now. But I also read that you saved 12 other operators that same night. Why do you only remember the one you lost? Mara's throat tightened. Because he was my friend. Because I promised him I'd get him home. Because, she stopped. It doesn't matter now. It does if it made you walk away from being the best damn combat medic the unit ever had. The general shifted, winced. You know what Richards told me once? Said you were the reason he could do the job. Knowing you had his back. Knowing if things went bad, Phantom would be there. I wasn't there enough. You were there for 40 minutes trying to restart a heart that couldn't be saved. That's being there. He paused. The team's been asking about you. When you're coming back. I'm not. Why? Because you save lives in a cafeteria instead of a combat zone? That's not moving forward. Phantom. That's hiding. The words stung because they were true. I can't go back, Mara said quietly. I can't watch another friend die while I'm holding pressure on a wound that won't close. I can't. Then don't come back to Delta. Come work here. The general gestured around the hospital. This facility has a contract with DOD. We treat wounded operators, classified injuries. They need a medical director who understands special operations. Someone who's been there. Mara stared at him. You're offering me a job? I'm offering you a purpose. Use your skills. Save lives. Train other medics. But stop pretending you're just cafeteria staff. His expression hardened. You're Phantom. Own it. Before she could respond, alarms erupted in the hallway. Someone shouting, active shooter. Basement level. Security breach. The Secret Service agents drew weapons, moving to defensive positions. Mara's training kicked in automatically. Assess, adapt, act. How many? She asked the nearest agent. Unknown. Reports of 2 gunmen, headed for the executive wing. Headed here. For the general. Mara looked at Madison, still too weak to move. Then at the agents taking position at the door. 2 agents, maybe 2 shooters. If those shooters were professionals, if they had tactical training, her hands were already moving, disconnecting the general's monitors, unlocking his bed's wheels. What are you doing? An agent demanded. Getting him out of here. You 2 hold the door. I'll extract the patient. Ma'am, you're not authorized. I'm the only one here who's done this under fire. Mara met his eyes. Trust me, or get out of my way. The service corridors of St. Catherine's weren't designed for hospital beds, but Mara had navigated worse terrain. She wheeled General Madison through the narrow passage, one hand on the bed frame, the other ready to respond if his vitals crashed. Where are we going? Madison's voice was strained but steady. Freight elevator. Down to the loading dock. Your people will secure this floor. We need to be somewhere else. She checked the corridor ahead. Clear. Behind them, gunfire erupted. Short, controlled bursts. Professional. Phantom. The general gripped her wrist. You don't have a weapon. Don't need one. I'm a medic, remember? She kept moving, her mind calculating angles and routes. My job is getting you out alive. The freight elevator was 60 feet ahead. Mara could hear footsteps now, heavy boots on linoleum, moving fast. She didn't have 60 feet. She pivoted, wheeling the bed through a door marked radiology storage. Dark inside, equipment humming. She positioned the bed behind an MRI machine and crouched beside it. Stay quiet, she whispered. Don't move. The general nodded. Even now, he trusted her. Footsteps in the corridor outside. Slowing. Searching. Mara's breathing slowed automatically. Combat breathing from 100 missions. She scanned the room. Lead aprons, medical supplies, a crash cart in the corner. Not weapons, but tools. The door opened. One man, tactical gear, carrying an AR pattern rifle. He swept the room methodically, professional. Military training, Mara noted. Not random violence. Targeted hit. He hadn't seen them yet. Mara waited until he passed the MRI machine, then moved. 3 steps, silent on the balls of her feet. Her hand caught his rifle, redirecting it as she drove her shoulder into his chest. He stumbled but recovered fast, definitely trained. He swung the rifle butt. Mara ducked, let it pass over her head, used his momentum to drive him into the wall. Her elbow found his solar plexus, then his throat. He dropped, gasping. She stripped the rifle, ejected the magazine, cleared the chamber. Empty weapon now. She wasn't going to use it anyway. Nicely done. The general's voice held grim approval. You haven't lost it. Wasn't trying to find it. Mara zip-tied the shooter with 4 tubing, gagged him with gauze. You good to move? Lead the way, Phantom. They made it to the freight elevator without encountering the second shooter. Mara kept her body between the general and any potential threat, scanning constantly. The doors opened. Empty car, thank God. She hit the button for the loading dock. There's only one reason someone comes after you in a hospital, she said as they descended. Someone wants you dead before you can testify or report something. You've been reading too many spy novels. I've been living them. The elevator shuddered to a stop. You know what this is about, General. Who wants you gone? Madison was quiet for a moment. I was supposed to testify before the Senate Intelligence Committee tomorrow about contract fraud in the defense budget. 60 million missing, traced to a shell company with ties to. He stopped. People who don't want me talking. The doors opened to the loading dock. 2 police cars waited, lights flashing. Secret Service agents converged immediately. General Madison, are you? I'm fine. Thanks to her. He pointed at Mara. Where's the second shooter? Apprehended on the 4th floor. 2 suspects in custody. The agent looked at Mara. You took down an armed hostile unarmed? I'm a medic. I improvised. The general actually laughed, then winced. She's being modest. Phantom here is trained in close quarters combat by the best operators in the world. That shooter never stood a chance. Mara felt the weight of their stares. Her cover wasn't just blown, it was obliterated. I need to check his vitals, she said, deflecting. Make sure the stress didn't. I'm fine. Madison caught her hand. But we're not done talking. About the job offer. Sir, I can't. You just saved my life twice in 12 hours. You took down a trained shooter without breaking a sweat. You're still Phantom, whether you're wearing scrubs or fatigues. His grip tightened. The question is, are you going to keep hiding in cafeterias, or are you going to do what you were meant to do? Mara looked at him. This general she'd saved, who somehow saw through all her carefully constructed walls. Then at the hospital behind them, where she'd spent 7 months trying to be invisible. I left because I couldn't save everyone, she said quietly. Because Richards died while I was trying. And how many have you saved since then? In this hospital? In those 7 months? She hadn't counted. Hadn't let herself. More than you've lost, the general said. That's the job, Phantom. We don't save everyone. But we save who we can. and you save more than most. An ambulance pulled up, paramedics ready to transport him to a secure facility. Before they loaded him, Madison looked at her one more time. Think about it. Medical director, special operations liaison. You train combat medics, work with active duty operators on classified cases. You'd be back in the fight, but not on the front lines. He paused. You'd be saving lives the way you were meant to. They wheeled him away. Mara stood on the loading dock as sunrise broke over DC, painting everything in shades of gold and amber. Marcus appeared at her shoulder. So, Phantom, huh? Apparently. You going to take the job? Mara didn't answer immediately. She thought about Captain Richards, about the promise she'd made to get him home. She hadn't kept that promise. But she'd kept 40 others, 40 operators who'd survived because she'd been there. She thought about the general, alive because she'd moved without thinking when he was bleeding out. She thought about being invisible versus being useful. Yeah, she said finally. I think I am. Marcus grinned. Good. Because cafeteria work was way below your pay grade. 6 weeks later, Dr. Mara Chen, the titles still felt strange, stood in the conference room of St. Catherine's newly established Special Operations Medical Unit. 12 combat medics sat around the table, most of them active duty, all of them watching her with the kind of skepticism reserved for outsiders. I'm Phantom, she began, and saw recognition flash in several faces. I was a medic with Delta Force for 6 years. I've worked 37 combat missions, handled everything from sucking chest wounds to battlefield amputations. I left the unit because I thought I was done. Turns out I was wrong. She clicked to the first slide, a trauma case study. This is what we're going to do here. We're going to save the operators who come through these doors. We're going to train you to work miracles with limited resources. And we're going to do it without losing who we are in the process. One of the medics raised a hand. Why'd you come back? If you walked away? Mara thought about the general's words. About Richards. About all the lives balanced against the ones she couldn't save. Because I remembered something. Being a medic isn't about saving everyone. It's about showing up, doing the work, and saving who you can. She met their eyes. And I'm really good at showing up. After the briefing, she found General Madison waiting in her office. Walking now, recovered from surgery, looking every bit the commander he'd always been. How's it feel, he asked. Being back. Different. Better. Mara smiled. Turns out I'm not very good at being invisible. No, you're good at being Phantom. There's a difference. He placed a folder on her desk. Your first case. SEAL team leader, sucking chest wound from Helmand province. Arriving in 40 minutes. They asked for you specifically. Mara opened the folder, her mind already running through procedures. I'll be ready. I know you will. Madison headed for the door, then paused. Richards would be proud, you know, of what you're doing here. The words landed softer than she expected. Thank you, sir. When he left, Mara stood alone in her office. White coat instead of scrubs, her credentials on the wall, her old medic bag from Afghanistan sitting on her desk like a promise kept. She'd spent 18 months trying to bury Phantom. Turns out, you couldn't bury what you were meant to be. Her pager buzzed. Incoming trauma. Rooftop. ETA 20 minutes. Mara grabbed her bag and headed for the elevator, moving. With purpose now instead of hiding. The doors opened to the roof access, where a helicopter was already approaching through the morning sky. She stood at the landing pad, wind whipping her hair, and waited to do what she did best. Save lives. One more time, and the time after that, and every time someone needed Phantom to show up. Because that's who she was. Not invisible. Not hiding. Just ready.